Hey guys, this is Senor Zapata here, and today I have prepared a lesson on comparing myths. This standard is for reading literature 4.9, and we're going to go ahead and start with our slides. So, before we actually go and read our myths, it's important for you to know what a myth is. So, a myth it's an ancient story, and this story was crafted by different cultures. That means every culture will have different myths and different stories related to different events. So these myths were generally created to explain mysteries in nature. Let's say many years ago, when science did not have when there was not much science, which is a better way to say, science was just starting. People did not have a lot of explanations for simple things like why does it rain, or why do we have thunder. So they would just go ahead and create myths, and these myths were their beliefs. These myths were what composed their religion. So these stories usually involve gods and goddesses with humans and epic adventures, big adventures. One of these cultures was the Greeks. Greek mythology is composed of the most popular stories in this genre. So everybody has heard about Hercules. So Hercules is a Greek myth that everybody's probably familiar with. So in today's lesson, we're going to compare two Greek myths. The first one's Athena and Medusa, and the second one we're going to read it's Echo and Narcissus. So we will compare the events and the character traits in both of these myths. So let's go ahead and start reading Athena and Medusa. Okay. Once upon a time, many years ago, there lived a beautiful maiden named Medusa. Medusa was beautiful with long flowing hair and soft skin. Medusa knew she was beautiful and spent her days walking around her hometown of Athens, Greece, talking about her beauty to anyone who would listen and admiring her reflection whenever she came upon it. One day, Medusa traveled with her friends to the Parthenon, which was the largest temple dedicated to the goddess Athena. Upon viewing all the beautiful sculptures and artwork modeled for Athena, Medusa said, "What a shame it was that they hadn't modeled the art after herself instead of Athena, since she was so much prettier." All of the other people in the temple were shocked and alarmed by the girl's bold statement, so everyone left the temple except for Medusa, who was too busy staring at her reflection. Suddenly, Athena appeared in the bronze doors that Medusa was staring at, and told her what a vain and foolish girl she was. She then changed Medusa into a hideous monster with hair made of snakes and a long slimy tail. Athena informed Medusa that anyone who looked at her face would be immediately turned to stone, including herself. She then banished her to the end of the earth, where she would not run into innocent people and turn them into stone. All right, that was the myth of Athena and Medusa. So Medusa went from a beautiful girl to a hideous monster. All right, so let's think a little bit about the story that we just read. I have 4 questions here, and I'm going to give you some time to stop the video and write down your answer, and then you play back, and I'll tell you what I think about those questions. All right, at this point, you are back. You play the video again, and let's talk about who is the main character in the story, which, of course, it is Medusa. Medusa is the main character in this myth. Number 2 is what did the character do to offend the Greek gods? So if you remember the story, Medusa compared herself to the goddess Athena, which just to give you a little bit of background on the story, um, Athena was the goddess of wisdom, and she was also the protector of Athens. That's why the name of the city, Athens, um, is connected to Athena. So, yes, Medusa offended Athena by saying she was way much prettier. And then, of course, she got punished from the gods. She got that punishment for Athena, from Athena. Sorry. All right. So number 3 says, what could be a word to describe the main character of the story and why? So I'm sure you came up with very similar words to the one that I came with. And of course, a big word to describe Medusa is vain. She was full of vanity. She was full of herself. So she was a vain character. She thought she was prettier than anybody else. And that would be a word to describe her. She was a vain character. And number 4, what was the lesson that the reader learned from the story? So, the lesson that the reader learned from the story, and then again, we all may have different answers, but the main lesson in the story is first, you've got to establish some respect. Athena was one of the Greek goddesses, so everybody pay respect to her, as the story said in the Parthenon, the temple. So you should respect um, those that are above in terms of the religion hierarchy. But more than that, you should not be vain. You should not be full of yourself, because at some point, life itself will give you a punishment for that. And I'm sure you came up with good ideas as well. All right. So now that we have this story, let's go to the second story we're using. The second story is Echo and Narcissus. So, besides gods and goddesses in the Greek mythology, they have a lot of magical creatures. And one of these creatures were the nymphs. Nymphs were kind of like fairies. They were not immortal, that means they could die. But if they were to have children with gods, then their children will be immortal, which means they'll never die. So let's go ahead and read Echo and Narcissus. Echo, a wood nymph, spotted the most handsome young man. His name was Narcissus. Echo did something she thought she would never do. She fell in love. But Hera, queen of the Olympus, had taken most of her voice. All she did was echo sounds made by others. She could howl like a wolf, but only if a wolf had just howled. She could sing like a breeze through reeds, but only if the reeds sang first. How could she tell Narcissus that she loved him? One day she spotted Narcissus looking into a stream. He seemed enchanted by what he saw. He did not know it was only the reflection of himself. Come to me, Narcissus begged, looking into the water. Come to me, Echo echoed eagerly. Narcissus swung about. Who's there? He angrily demanded to know. Who's there? Echo echoed loudly. Stop that! Narcissus snapped. Stop that! Echo echoed. Let's meet, Narcissus said in a much softer voice than he had used so far. Let's meet, Echo echoed happily. She stepped out from behind a tree. Go away! Narcissus shouted at her. Go away, Echo echoed. Echo went sadly away. Things didn't go well for Narcissus after that. Narcissus returned to the stream again and again. He stared at the lovely young man he saw in the water, a young man who was only the reflection of himself. Hidden from sight, Echo watched Narcissus as he lay by the stream. She repeated everything that Narcissus said. Narcissus ignored her. Day after day, he lay by the stream, admiring his own reflection. He stopped eating, he stopped drinking, and finally, he died. Here's a little picture, a little artwork. So if you see this, this is Echo, the wood nymph, and here you've got Narcissus, so very much in love with his own reflection. Okay, so now let's think about this story. Same procedure. Read the questions, write down your answers, and I'll be back in a moment to tell you my answers and compare my answers to yours. All right, let's see what answers you've got. First question reads, who is the main character in the story? So, of course, we got two characters in the story, Echo and Narcissus. The main character in the story is, of course, Narcissus. Okay, but some of you probably wrote Echo and Narcissus as the main character, and that is correct as well. They were both main characters in the story. I would just pick Narcissus as the main focus in the story. Why did the character die at the end? So he died because the only thing that he was now doing was staring at his reflection. He was so very much in love with himself. He stopped eating. He just practically stopped living to go and stare himself at the stream, to go and see his reflection. So that's why he died. Number 3 is, what could be a word to describe the main character of the story and why? So Narcissus, just as Medusa, was a vain character, was a character full of himself, a character that was so very much in love with himself. He was a vain character. And why? Because, of course, he would only stare at his reflection all day long. That was the only thing he wanted to do. Number 4, what was the lesson that the reader learned from the story? So at this point, I think you know where I'm going. The lesson that you get from the story is very, very similar to the lesson that we learned from Medusa and Athena. You have to be humble. You should not be vain. Okay? Now let's compare and contrast a little bit. I have 3 sentences that I want you to finish with your own information. Then I'll be back in a moment and tell you my ideas so we can compare. Okay, I hope that you paused the video, completed the sentences with your ideas, and now I'm going to tell you my ideas. Maybe they're similar. In both stories, the reader can say that I completed it with a tragic event happens. In both of these myths, the end is really tragic. It's really sad. So in the first story, Medusa went from beautiful woman to a hideous monster just because she was vain and she thought she was more beautiful than the goddess Athena herself. For number 2, both characters were vain and they got punished. They both were vain. That was the characteristic, the character trait that both of them had in common. They were vain. And then finally, the 2 myths show how people should not think that the physical appearance makes them better than anybody else. Your physical appearance should never lead you to think that you are better than anybody else. Okay, then after reading and comparing these myths, there's 3 questions. Which myth did you like more and why? What could Medusa have done differently? And how do you think Echo felt after Narcissus' death? And then you explain why you think she felt that way. So I'm going to leave those 3 questions. Find an answer for those questions. Go back to the reading, read those myths again, and I'm looking forward to share another video with you.